Regardless of if you're aiming to be a general ed teacher or a special ed teacher, if you want to be a good and attentive teacher, you'll want to have some strategies for helping learners of different skill levels in your back pocket. There's many disabilities and challenges that you will encounter in any educational setting, and I'm going to explore some possible interventions right now in Elijah's case study. Elijah is a 7th grade student who usually performs strongly at this level, but like any kid, he has areas of struggle. He has a hard time with things like writing by hand, tying his shoes, and buttoning buttons. Academically, he is a bright and motivated learner. Considering Elijah's challenges, it can be concluded that his fine motor skills are at a deficit, and there's a gap between his and those of his peers that needs to be closed. Fine motor skills are what we use to move our fingers and coordinate our hands precisely. This physical challenge affects his academic performance because he struggles to express his ideas or thoughts in writing. Specifically, his letter formation, spacing, and spelling are off. Looking at his disorganized writing creates frustration and hurts his self-confidence when it comes to writing. So what can we do to help? This is a little plan that any educator could easily incorporate into Elijah's day, and it involves 3 intervention components. The first intervention is typing. It would benefit Elijah to have him type his assignments instead of handwriting them. This might be seen more commonly as an accommodation, but the reason I believe it can be classified as an intervention too is because it isn't just changing how he learns, but improving a deficit for him at the same time. Because typing has been shown to build fine motor skills. This is why it's better for his situation than just letting him dictate orally. Typing will also reduce his frustration with his messy handwriting. If he can see his thoughts written neatly, he won't become discouraged, give up, or think less of himself this way. I think this is a great temporary allowance for Elijah while he's still building his skills. The second intervention is the idea of giving Elijah a motor movement minute, patent pending. This is a time for him to step back from his assignment to do an activity that engages or rests and re-energizes his fine motor skills. What this might look like in the classroom is having Elijah fill out a sheet electing how long of a moment away he needs and what he'll choose to do instead. This will be good for when Elijah becomes frustrated and needs a break. This idea gives him some control over his situation to decide if he wants to do hand exercises and activities. A moment can also be used to help him warm up to write or cool down from it. Allotting time for these moments a day will also have Elijah building his fine motor skills consistently with these options. Some examples of said options that are appropriate to his age demographic and just a casual break are crumpling old papers into balls and then tossing it in a certain spot, cutting shapes with scissors, maybe even a small creative break like making kirigami. Walking a ball is a good distressor, where you hold a ball against your leg and roll it up and down using your fingers. Balancing a beanbag and twirling it using your fingertips, moving one at a time. Or separating modeling clay into as many small balls as possible. You can even keep these materials all together in a bin for Elijah. These are just some of the things you could do for this intervention. Our third and final intervention is more oriented to outside of class, and it is occupational therapy. If the school is affiliated with one of these therapists, the professional could dedicate a set-aside time of day just to build Elijah's skills to his goals. This would be helpful because a therapist specifically trained in this field will be accustomed to providing emotional support during times when Elijah is dejected and not feeling hopeful about his abilities. They will know just what to say in these scenarios. Working with an occupational therapist, Elijah will have more time to work on his skills, and one-on-one, the therapist is also bound to have other resources and knowledge that your average educator won't have access to. For example, they might supply sheets with grids for Elijah to practice his letter formation and spacing to improve his handwriting, like that little picture down in the right corner. They might also have him do exercises targeted towards pencil control. I'll demonstrate some of these right now for you to keep in mind. Okay. So in preparation for writing with a pencil, we need a pencil, so we're doing great. And we also need to be able to isolate our tripod fingers, which are your middle finger, pointer finger, and thumb. With minimal movement from these other two back here. Because when we arch the tripod fingers to grip a pencil without the other two sticking out, it gives more joint and muscle stability. When we write properly like this, we have more endurance and won't get wore out as easily, and we'll have more control and precision. So, some tiny exercises for getting used to this are pencil pops, which is just scrunching up our pencil hand and popping over to the paper, over and over again. We have pencil flips from tip to eraser, one finger at a time. This is good for one hand, in-hand manipulating and working the muscles. We also have coloring squares on grids to practice repetitive back and forth motions. We also have tracing and then coloring in small circles. This practices the small circular movements that are common in quite a few letters. To take it up a notch, have a child trace spirals. Those are some warm-ups. I can retire from hand modeling now. And this is all part of an intervention plan for Elijah and any students you might have that are struggling in the same way he is, to close the gap and reach their full potential as a learner. Thank you for listening.